Hey, folks, welcome to another episode of Broken Brains with your host, Bruce Parkman, sponsored by the Mac Parkman Foundation, where we look at the issue of repetitive brain trauma, from repetitive head impacts in contact sports to repetitive blast exposure in our veteran population, and what these conditions are doing to the brains of our children, our veterans, and our athletes. And the causes and how they are causing what could be it's called the largest epidemic of mental illness that's preventable in this country. So we reach out to researchers and doctors and lawyers and holistic practitioners and all kinds of folks out there to give you the 360-degree view of this issue. Why? Because this is not taught in any nursing, medical, or psychological course. And you need to be informed to make those correct decisions for yourself, those you love, to include our children. Today, another set of amazing guests. We love having twofers on this show, man. Chris Lessard and Marcia Lessard. I said it right, Lessard or Lessard?
You sure did. You're actually one of the few people that it's usually Lessard, what we hear.
All
I usually
right,
tell people, hey, Police Academy movies think that, but not many people know the Police Academy movies anymore. So,
all right, I got it. All right, we'll give it one for the Boston Education Center. So Chris Lessard is a retired Army Green Beret instructor and project manager. He's the owner of the Brain Treatment Center in Ashburn, where they specialize in functional health and MERT, a non-invasive treatment for depression, PTSD, and TBI. Chris plays a key role in overseeing various aspects of the clinic and ensuring that cutting-edge therapies are accessible to veterans and the broader community. Chris is a student at Liberty University, currently pursuing a master's in clinical mental health counseling, and drawing from his personal experiences with TBI and PTSD, he plans to specialize in trauma therapy for special operations veterans, first responders, and their families. His goal is to provide tailored, compassionate care to those affected by the unique challenges of trauma, and he is a husband and father of 4 living in the Northern Virginia area with Marcia Lessard, right here, the wife of Chris Lessard, and, at Green Beret, and a mother of 4, currently resides in the Washington, D.C. area. Her career journey has been diverse, beginning in law enforcement and transitioning through roles in education, investigations, and the nonprofit sector. It was through this journey that she discovered her true passion, holistic health and counseling. A graduate of Johns Hopkins University with both undergraduate and graduate degrees in ethical management, Marcia has recently completed a naturopathic program and is now pursuing her MSW. We need to talk about that because I don't even know what that is. She plans to specialize in trauma and PTSD care for special operations veterans, first responders, and their families. In addition to being a certified yoga teacher, and I am married to one, and I practice yoga religiously as an old man. Marcia is a practitioner of the Listening Program, an auditory and integration therapy modality, and QRI, primitive reflex integration. I want to know more about that. She is driven by her belief in holistic healing and the conviction that we are created according to God's divine design. Her approach integrates biological, physiological, psychological, and social perspectives to promote true healing and mental well-being, and probably without the use of pharmaceutical drugs that are kicking the ass out of our veteran population. Chris, Marcia, welcome to the show, man. What an amazing journey you both have been on. So how did you find each other?
Oh my gosh.
I'll let you go.
I
Go ahead
bought
with
him
that.
on the internet. He was the best $33.99 I ever spent. I bought him on the internet. We met on Match.com.
$33.99. That's a hell of a deal for a good husband nowadays, man. I'll tell you.
Right? Yeah.
She was a little bit more expensive. I think the men actually pay more on that site. I think I spent $40.
Of course we do, man.
It was worth it,
especially for the premium edition, right?
Exactly.
So, wow.
I went premium with this one.
Dude, sounds like those algorithms were really hitting it hard that day, man. Good on you. Congratulations. And
Thank you.
so where'd you go on your first date?
Oh my gosh. Chris actually drove 8 hours for our first date. He was at drill up in Massachusetts, and we had started talking, and I was doing Match because I was a cop at the time, and I didn't want people to know that I was a cop because men can act a little weird about that. And we met, we talked for like, I don't know, a week or 2 straight, and he drove 8 hours down for our first date, and we went to DC. That was like my old stomping grounds. That's where I grew up. And he asked me to be his girlfriend that night. I think he's probably the first guy ever who was like, will you be my girlfriend? It was the sweetest thing ever. I was hooked.
I sounded just like that too.
That's good.
It was, yeah.
We all do on that first date.
Yeah, right,
So
right.
you were driving. So you're from the Boston area, Chris?
I am, and I was actually going to ask because I noticed that Patriot scarf on the back. Are you from the area or?
Oh yeah, man. I'm a old, what do they call them, masshole from back in the day,
Yeah,
man.
I'm right there with you. Yep, I actually grew up in Watertown, Massachusetts area. But yeah, I was up there drill out at Springfield at the time, and I was coming back and drove 8 hours. Probably left a little earlier than I should have, but I wanted to meet the future missus, and yeah, it's been magic ever since.
That's awesome, man. So, so were you in the active army or were you in the reserves?
Yeah, so I was active army for a while. Started off in the infantry down at Polk in the 509th, and then went to selection. Yeah, there you go, Geronimo, and then went to third group. And
Wait, Geronimo,
okay.
like first of the 501st in the 101st.
So yeah, so they call the 509 Geronimo, like that's their thing.
Right. Back in 1982, when I was in the 101st, it was first of the 501st, but I don't know that all changed.
Yeah, nice.
So all right, my bad. I'm sorry, man. I was flashing back pretty
You're
hard.
good,
All
man.
right, so
You're good. It happens.
No, dude, I don't hear that anymore, man. But yeah, go ahead, man. So, so you went to selection?
Yeah, went to selection, went to third group for a few years. Probably should have stayed in, but at the time I was like, I want to see what else is there in life. Left there and like within 2 or 3 months, I was like, screw this. I at least want to be, part of it still somehow. And then that's when I joined 20th group up in Springfield. And then spent the next few years, bouncing back from 20th and 19th group just based off of where we're moving up and down the East Coast pretty much.
Okay. What was your MOS?
So I was 18 Echo, then I went Fox, and then I was acting Zulu for a few years.
Okay, so I thought I was going to put my money on 18 Delta, man, medic. Since you
no, do I look like a Delta? You guys are weird.
You look smart, man. I don't know, man. I think we all know that Echoes and Deltas, all Bravos and Charlies are guys that flunked the Delta and Echo course, right? I mean, we all know this, right? I mean,
well, of course. It's funny though because I, being an 11 Bravo prior to being 18 series, I thought I was a shoe-in for 18 Bravo, and that's what I put in for. And they said, "No, you're gonna work radios, dude." Like, all right, well,
really? Did they give you the INT test? Oh, that's right. You guys don't do Morse code anymore.
No, so I was the first class where they stopped doing Morse code.
Really? What year was that?
That was 03, I want to say early 03.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, you were in there quite a while ago, man. That's
yeah. It's been a while. It's we were having that conversation a few nights ago, and I was like, man, it's been over 20 or about 20 years now since I went to dive school, and I'm like, that ain't cool, man.
Yeah. I was the first class in that new pool back in 1987, bro.
Nice.
I just was down there with my wife in Key West. I go, hey, honey, you want to go see the pool? She goes, what pool? I go, the pool where I almost died. So we drive out to the end of that key, and the gate was open, bro. So we drive in.
Nice.
And we got to the building. I'm like, well, shit, ain't nobody here. So I knock on the door. The door's open. So we're working. So what I was, how we built all those posters at the end of our class. We took our pictures and we're all on there. I was like, hey, let's go find my class poster. Of course, 30 years ago, we're halfway through that building. Somebody goes, can we help you? I was I guess we weren't supposed to be in there. So anyway, but that pool was still there, dude. Craziness, man.
We got married down there. Like,
what's that?
We got married down there. Chris was like, when we were planning our wedding, Chris was like, wouldn't it be so amazing if like the two most important parts of like my career and my life kind of happened in the same location? And I was like, yes. And then he left. He like deployed or went on training or something. He's like, you plan it, babe. And I called down. The girl's like, I'll give you 50% off your wedding. And I was like, oh, she likes me. She thinks I'm cool. We showed up. It was like naked bikers everywhere. I was like, what have we done?
It was like a few days before Bike Week started. So the body paint was a flow in. People were just strolling down. And she's like crying because it's like, this is her wedding. And I'm having a great time
coming down. Yeah. You're like, I love you,
Yep.
honey.
We ran away
Yep,
on purpose, and then,
exactly.
like, 30 to 40 people still showed up at this wedding, so we had this, like, beautiful big wedding under a tent at, like, 0 Duval Street. We could see, the school off in the distance and stuff like that, and then, like, 3 of our pictures, there's, like, half-naked bikers, like, popping up on the pier, sticking their beer bottles in our pictures.
Dude, that is amazing, man.
Yeah.
Well, man, Chris, thank you so much for your service, man. That's awesome.
I
And
appreciate it,
Marcia,
man.
so
You
you were a
too.
police officer.
I was. I was a
Uh,
police officer when Chris and I first met, and, when we were talking about time the other day, I was like, "Wait, when did you go to dive school?" And I realized it was, like, right around the time that I started police academy. So I started on my 21st birthday. I was a designated driver the night before. I took all my girlfriends to Baltimore and then showed up at police academy the next day, ready to go. Um, and I would have reached natural retirement this year, but I was medically retired a few years into it after a pretty significant incident and had to have some surgery and had some things fixed and whatnot. And now here we are. But I always say, like, the timing was so perfect because I don't know, I was just so ready for I was doing this master's at Hopkins. I was super training. I wanted to do SWAT, but my big goal was to be a federal agent. And I had no interest in getting married. I was already a single mom. I didn't want any more kids. And then boom, I got hurt. And it was such an identity conflict because I had developed all of my personality around my profession. I
all
was
right.
working at a municipality within Prince George's County, which is like a really high speed area. We were doing our thing. I was having a lot of fun. I was learning a lot, and I was very active in community oriented policing and working with the kids in the area. I really wanted to get into drugs, and my goal was to be in the DEA. And then I got hurt, and everything shifted. And I never really there was a lot of PTSD involved, and I didn't think like, how am I going to recover? But in retrospect, it was so perfect because I met this amazing guy, and I had no thought in my head that I'm ever going to get married or do any of that. But I was vulnerable enough in that moment, praise God, that I was like, yeah, I'll get into a relationship with you. I'll date you. You're a strong, handsome army guy.
It's all It's all God's plan. I mean,
Yeah,
it might not look like it at the time, but it is all part of God's plan.
it
So,
is. And I'm
well,
grateful for
man,
every minute of it. Yeah.
well, I tell you, I mean, just talking to you both and then reading it here, it sounds like not only do you have a common denominator of love, sounds like you both got a common denominator of PTSD and TBI. So, I mean, and that might have led you down this path. So, Chris, let's start with you, man. Tell us about, what your experience has been with these, two issues that, have impacted a significant amount of our brothers out there in the special operations community and sisters
Yeah,
too.
here we go, right? So yeah, it was a long, long battle. Before I met Marcia, there was issues with, traumatic brain injury that I wasn't aware of, that we just kind of, all went about our business. I was actually, and it's not even a cool story, like, I wasn't a hero or anything like that. It was an ATV rollover where I rolled down a mountain. I don't remember hitting the ground, but I remember coming to and looking down at the sky, and then like the ground was like the ceiling. It's kind of weird. And then eventually things kind of warped back to normal. Then you add in all, flashbangs going off and, combatives training and jumps. I was never a PLF guy. I was always foot, butt, head, or just foot, head. Yeah, that whole PLF thing is BS, I think.
Yeah.
So just all that stuff. Um, I started really, really drinking, and I get, a lot of people do start drinking a lot. Painkillers was another big thing. And just a lot of stuff that I really started self-medicating, but I was still in denial of it. I wasn't realizing that it was an issue because, even childhood stuff that I grew up in, I didn't have the best of childhoods. Single family or a single, parent home, pretty much raised in the projects, through my aunt and, all that stuff. So went through and was just really good at compartmentalizing stuff, which I think we're all doing. We all are good at that. That's why they choose us down this path, is we can really take an event, say, okay, this happened, I'm going to put this over here and I'm going to continue mission. And that's great. It's like a superpower until it's not, right? And then it just all catches up. So as time went on, things kind of really moved into a breaking point. I was at the point where I didn't understand what was happening. I was at the point I was making horrible decisions. I was, suicidal. I hate saying that, but it is what it is. Um, and there was just a lot of issues. I finally got scanned for TBI. I think that was in 2015 at the VA. They confirmed, they said, "Hey, buddy, yeah, tag, you're it." So I went, all right, did some normal treatments. I went to prep down in Tampa in 2017, I think it was. It was that 3-week program. I was there for almost 10 weeks. And for what it is, it's a really good program. VA did their thing for a while. But I was on the medication cocktail. I was on a lot of different medications. And although I changed all of my behaviors that I wasn't thrilled with, depression started kind of easing off, stuff like that. I wasn't suicidal, but I was really a shell of a person. I wasn't really living life. I put on 30 pounds and I was just kind of going through the motions. And that was a problem. And Marcia, bless her heart, she has always been into the, organic eating, the microbiomes, all the stuff, the holistic health. So we started, kind of working that. We went to a doctor for more functional hormonal tests and stuff, got my test done through him, and he found like I was extremely high in mercury, Lyme disease. I had high levels of lead. My vitamin D was way off. My testosterone, although in the quote unquote normal range, was like 300 or something like that. And I was, I don't know, 36,
Not for
37.
your age. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's nowhere near. And so we started doing more of that. I did chelation therapy, more glutathione, more healthy eating. And things started to get better. And I thought, okay, this is as good as it's going to get. Outstanding. And then we found MERT. Now, Marcia will go into it about our son. So our son is, I guess was at this point, which is incredible, but he is the autism spectrum.
So I can
Organization Task Force. Go
jump
ahead,
in.
Marcia.
Yeah, I can jump in and kind of because we
Yeah,
did
go
a
ahead.
little bit in reverse order, but I'll tell you Luke's story real quick and then we'll come right back to Chris
Yeah.
because it's just so impactful. I mean, I went to Hopkins for ethical management, but I was very proud of that degree and everything that came along with it. And I was probably one of the most mainstream medical people that you could ever meet. And that was not a medical degree, but I was just on board with all of it. And Luke, Chris, for a while, he was stationed down in Tampa. He was a warrior care rep. He was on ADOS orders. And when we got there, it was like a switch flipped. Like overnight, Luke went from walking, talking, happy, healthy kiddo, 2-year-old to just gone. His words were gone, his motor function was gone, and he regressed into pretty severe nonverbal autism. Now, in Florida, each state is so different. People don't realize it, but access to care and different things is very different in each state. So in Florida, every day of the week, they're like, you want sensory therapy, you want OT therapy, speech therapy, this and that. So we signed up for all the therapies. TRICARE covered all of it. It was great. And so we were making some progress, but not big progress. And that's where Chris and I actually really got into CrossFit at that time. It's like a gateway drug to so many other things. So that got us really into microbiome and eating clean and organic and doing all this stuff. And I had done some personal training before, but that it was like a whole new world about interdependent systems instead of independent systems. So we got the diet really clean. We got the biome really good. And at some point, we thought, okay, we'll move to New England when these orders are up instead of renewing them because there's got to be even more resources up there. And it was the worst mistake ever. We were living in rural New Hampshire and there was nothing that took TRICARE, driving 2 hours each way for very poor speech therapy. And at this point, we had gotten Lukey a service dog because if he got sensory overwhelmed, he was bolting. And we had had another baby since then. They were only 18 months apart. And I was bolting after this kid with this baby on my chest. So Task Force Agri Foundation, actually, when they were first, up and coming, reached out and said, hey, there is this therapy going on in California. We are treating guys who are retired with it. It's working amazingly well for PTSD and TBI. Off-label, they're treating autism. We'd love to send Chris if he wants it, but they weren't treating anybody who was still in at that time. But can we send you out there? Just figure out if it's something that's going to help. So right around that time, we had gotten a diagnosis of severe nonverbal autism from top pediatric neurologist up in Dartmouth. I'm like, okay, put me on a plane, because the only therapy options that they offered were ABA, and ABA was new, but the ABA center up there wanted us to place him in ABA, which is an autism therapy. It's more like a behavioral training therapy, for 40 hours a week. And it was non-parental involvement. I was like, you're absolutely insane if you think I'm dropping my nonverbal kiddo off and giving him a full-time job. So I jumped right on the plane. We go out to California. Newport Beach is the only place in the world that they were doing this MERT therapy at the time. And the process starts with an EEG. So they come to me and they say, this EEG is not diagnostic. It's the same EEG that we do here in our clinic. It's not diagnostic, but we do see patterns. And his pattern is that of somebody with severe, autism. And I was like, yeah, I know. I sit with him. I know it is every day. So another part of that program, and we do that here in our clinic as well, is 30 minutes of morning sunlight before 11 a.m. every day. It resets the circadian rhythms. It creates a natural cortisol spike about midday, which triggers the brain to create, all your sleepy chemicals and hormones naturally right around bedtime. So every morning I'm at the beach with him. I'm running with him and the baby in the double jogging stroller. And, that's like, I'm out there alone in a studio apartment. Chris is holding the fort back home with our older daughter. And one morning I gave him the iPad because I was like, I just need 2 miles of peace and quiet. I'm just going to run. You guys are going to play on this pad, get your sunlight. I'm now quiet. So I go to pull him out of the stroller and I pull the iPad away from him. He's fussing. He hasn't said a word to me, not an authentic word, in 2 years. And I say to him, buddy, come on, why didn't you want to go to the beach with me today? And he looks me right in the eyes. He goes, I was busy. And I almost fell over. He was busy. And so I take him right to the back of the clinic and I'm like, he's talking. And they're like, yeah, that's amazing. Like, he is one of the rare few that really starts talking. And so we really thought it was the microbiome and the functional health and putting together all this stuff. But Chris flew right out when that happened to kind of see him and see what was going on. And I'll never forget, like, we were at the Marriott, we're sitting alone around the fire one night. It's all these retired guys. And he was talking about they were all talking about why they were there. And Chris was talking about some of the things he had going on. And this older guy came up and he put his hand on his shoulder and he was like, Chris, if these are the things you're experiencing, you need to go get your head scanned. And Chris was like, no, I'm fine. These are normal in our community. And in retrospect, knowing what I know now, doing this clinical mental health degree in the functional medicine, coming from my own, retired law enforcement PTSD bubble, there were some significant things. But Chris and I were both kids that were raised with, if you're familiar with it, a really high ACEs score. The higher your ACEs score, the more traumatized you were as a child.
I'm sorry to interject. What's an ACEs score? I've never heard of that.
So an ACEs assessment is something you're going to get when you sit down for any type of therapeutic intervention, like counseling or something like that. And the higher your ACEs score is, the more likely you are to be a Green Beret. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, maybe, because you can compartmentalize really well. But people with high ACEs scores have been through a lot of trauma as children. And so I think we're all kind of drawn to each other, in a certain, way, because we have similar experiences. But with that, I think when the stuff with the TBI started coming out and the stuff with the PTSD coming out, because we had both had such a background in childhood trauma, we were just like, this is normal. This is okay. You think it's normal until you realize that this isn't what normal is. I'm sure we were both in relationships before that were very chaotic and lots of crazy stuff happening. And that felt normal to us until we realized, even just being with each other, we were in a really healthy spot when we got together. It was different than it had ever been in any other relationship before for both of us. So, he goes back to Manchester, New Hampshire. He gets his head scanned and he's got this massive TBI. And we did go the normal VA route for a long time.
So nobody had found this when you got, what kind of scan was it, Chris? Was it an MRI or a functional MRI or?
So they did the MRI, they did the whole CAT scan, but they also did the 3 hours of testing and, hey, move these object with the one hand into there and things of that nature. And then, the whole screening thing. But it was a long process. It took, I think, over a span of 3 days, probably, an hour each day and then 3 hours in the one middle day. So it was a decent effort.
And this was after prep?
No, this was 2 years before, 2 years prior.
Okay.
So,
all right. All right. So you had, all right. Yeah. Okay. All right.
So even after that, I think just learning that he had a TBI from a wife perspective, that he was a great compartmentalizer, because when he was home with us, he was super dad. He was super dad. He was super husband and all this all these things. But he was still, he was working in government contracting. He was doing the Green Beret National Guard thing. So we honestly, we added it up at one point. We think about the first 10 years of our marriage, he was gone for like 9 to 10 months out of the year between the contracting and the special operations guard stuff. So like when we were together, it was great. He was on point about everything, but it was in that different travel and those different things where I think things were really falling apart. And he was like just shifting into those different roles, but those compartments really started to come down. And then we realized like, hey,
And I
there
think
needs to be
that's a
some
thing
help.
that is often the trend, right? When we're away from our support system, and Marcia has been my support system pretty much since I've known her. When we're away from that, and I'm not saying this is the end all be all, we'll talk about that later, but I think that's when, the demons really mess with you, right? I think that was my issue, is when I lost my support system and I didn't know how to function properly. And that depression, all of a sudden it just would kick in almost immediately, and, self-medicate. I just got to distract myself from all of this stuff. And that was my biggest issue. And so, looking back at it now, it's like, and then the other thing is when you do that, it's like, you already have the depression, you don't know what's going on, you're depressed, but now you're making decisions that are making you more depressed because now you're living with even more regret. So it
Hungover, yeah.
just,
Were you being treated with pharmaceuticals at this time as well?
I was. So I can't remember what
Ah.
year it was. Yeah. 09, 010, something. I went because I knew something was off, and I went to a doctor, but I didn't want to be fully open because I didn't know this dude. I didn't trust him.
Got
I
a
didn't
career.
want to lose anything. So I would only give
Yeah.
them a little bit. So they would give me medications. Come to find out that medication with my stuff actually made things probably a lot worse.
And we
Yeah.
find that even now, like in practice, that a lot of guys, if you go into a clinician and you say, I have anxiety, and I go in and I say I have anxiety, if they're a standard clinician, they're just going to write you a script. But if they really break it down, that your anxiety is going to look different than mine. It's going to feel different than mine. And it could be two different things. It could be I have anxiety because I have PTSD. It could be you have anxiety because you have TBI. And really often what we're hearing from a lot of the benevolent organizations and people that we're seeing is that if they have TBI, they go in, they say, well, I'm just kind of down and I'm depressed. And they don't talk about all the other dark stuff that's going on. The doctor doesn't cue in on it, and they give them an SSRI. And the SSRIs are causing a lot of different things to happen in these guys, including periods of psychosis, which is exactly what my husband had.
And they got a black box warning that is not divulged. And they finally got some legislation passed that says, look, this stuff that I'm going to give you has a black box warning for psychosis, suicidal ideation, whatever, right? And the other thing I'll say is while they were giving you those drugs, they're not doing anything for the damage to your brain from all that repetitive blast exposure, all that repetitive head impacts, which now we know could have been the whole cause of all these issues. So they're medicating the hell out of you, and they're giving you some therapy from people that have been in the military, and they're giving you a bag of drugs, but they're not doing anything about this. And so, wow.
There's so many components with that. So right now, I'm doing a fellowship in neuropsych, and it's functional neuropsych. And we're looking at the person as a whole person. And if we're looking at the toxin exposure overseas just by region, right? And then if you have a guy who has poor methylation processes, which is methylation is really an enzyme in your body that tells your cells how to behave, how to detox, express your genetics, then you're exposed to a toxin, you're going to hold on to that, which is going to cause a domino effect of other symptoms, especially after a brain injury, because the methylation needs to detox your brain. But then we look at metabolic health. If you have chronic immune activation, you guys are traveling all over the world, you're being exposed to different things, you're being given things to prevent things from exposure to different things. You have chronic.
Hey, try this shot.
You have a chronic immune activation,
Maybe
which can
a few
cause
of those.
poor metabolic function. 3 nights of bad sleep causes poor metabolic function. On top of that, I don't think that you guys are eating the healthiest when you're in the military. I just don't believe it.
What?
But our story really
Ramen ain't good for you?
MERT.
Yeah.
So MERT moved the mountain for both my son and my husband. So he did almost a decade on all the pharmaceuticals, was a shell of his former self. And I remember just sitting down with him and being like, we need to do something else because I can't live like this anymore. Like, I miss you. Like, you were this go-getter. He had all of these goals in the military and he always crushed every single one of them. And then it was like 1 year where the PTSD and the
stopped.
TBI got so bad and they were like, you're 18 and a half years in, we're going to retire you. And that's really where I feel like the wind got taken out of his sails and he just fell into the medications. And then our son hit middle school age and he's talking. He's like, he's a pretty normal kid, but he didn't have that social emotional component. So I always like tell this story, like this girl was flirting with him one day and I was standing across the hallway and I was kind of listening to it. And she was like, oh, you're homeschooled? And she was like, do you ever want to come to school and like hang out with me, go to regular school? And he looked at her, he was like, my mom has done my homeschool in 2 hours. Why would I go to school with you? Like he didn't get it. So I was like, we need to get him some more MERT. So like somebody's going to want to marry this rude kid one day. Some damaged woman will take this rudeness. So these MERT clinics started opening across the country. They started licensing and opening them. And we had talked about opening one before, but we just like, how would we ever do that? And one of the MERT clinics opened in Denver. Another special operations guy, retired SEAL, owns it. And he was like, hey, come out. We'll see what we can do. Chris, if you have depression, we can bring you in under TRICARE as long as you meet all the standard of that. And we'll work out a deal. We'll treat Luke too. And then that's when Chris got out there. And you wanted to kind of take it from there, babe?
Yeah. So, and when they reached out to us, I kind of was like, yeah, I'll go check the block. I don't know what it's going to do for me, but I know what it does for Luke, and any help we can get for him, hey, that's one more, brick in the wall. Right?
Yep.
So we go out there, and I'm doing it, and about 4 or 5 weeks goes by, and I really don't notice much difference, but whatever. I'm there. I'm trying to hold a good attitude, and it was about week 5 or 6 that I was in rush hour traffic outside of Denver, and I was sitting in traffic, and I realized I wasn't gripping the steering wheel. I wasn't white knuckling and raging out. And I was like, all right, that's interesting. Then I also noticed that I was actually falling asleep and sleeping through the night. And I was always that guy that was NyQuil with Tylenol PM and melatonin, grind it all up, take a shot, and still not be able to sleep. I was like, interesting. Right, I started dreaming when my goodness, I don't remember the last time I had a dream prior to that. And so I called up Marcia and I was like, hey, if you're all right, I'm going to start to come off some of these meds slowly, see what happens. Now, rewind to 2017 when I was in prep, I came off some of the meds while I was there and it was a disaster. I was calling her up at 1 in the morning saying, hey, you need to go in the basement and look. I bet there's snakes down there. Or, hey, you need to move the fish tank. It's going to start a fight. And she is like, what is going on? To the point, water bottle. Yeah, it was like a mess.
Who are you?
So she was
I have to say, Chris is one of
apprehensive
the
at
most
first, a little
level-headed
like,
people I've ever met. So it was really weird.
So I told her, I said, hey, if you don't mind, because it was only Luke and I out there by ourselves. And I said, hey, I'm going to try to come off these, see what happens. I started coming off of them more and more and more. And then there were no side effects. Like I was actually still stable. And it's been January now of 2024. And I'm still pretty stable. I lost, 30 some odd pounds, coming off all of the medication cocktail, sleeping through the night. And I'm like, what, there was absolutely something to this. I saw a massive difference. So then, while we were out there, we were talking to a couple of the reps and they said, we're talking to us about a clinic. And I was on the phone and they mentioned something about, being with Luke and Liam. And it really hit me. And then I swear I heard a voice saying, you have to do it. And so the rest of the call, I'm like, I'm just hearing that in my head. I'm not really hearing the rest of the call at all. I'm just kind of like, okay. We hung up and she called me out. She was like, well, what do you think? I was like, we just have to do it. And we're not business people at all. I mean, we're doing a great job now. It's been over a year, but we just took a leap of faith and that's really what it was. We just got that nudge because, we just saw what it did for Luke. We saw what it did for some of the veterans when we were out there at Newport. I experienced what I felt. And so we just had to start down this path. And MERT isn't, not solely what we focus on. And Marcia will get more into that. But we knew we had to do something to just try to bring people back.
Give back. Yeah. God
And that's
bless
the
you.
difference. It's about like service for us because so many people did so much to hold us up during that time. And now that we're in a position where we can do that for others, like that's what it's about. So most of the clinics are just MERT, and MERT does amazing things. Like I'm evangelical about it. It gave me my son back, and it gave me the best version of my husband back. I mean, I would have been with him I was with him even at his worst version, and I would have stayed through all of it if that's the way that it continued. But since he's done MERT, he's fully present in our relationship again. I feel like I don't have to walk on eggshells if we're changing courses or anything like that. Like, it's just like I have a partner in this again. I have the partner that I had in the beginning, and our relationship is better than it's ever been. But when they said, do you guys want to open your clinic? And it's like a license agreement, I was like, we can do whatever we want. So we brought in a doctor who's retired special operations. We brought in a pediatric specialist who's like over 30 years in pediatrics, and we're getting everybody certified and fully up to speed on what is being called functional health. But really it's like what you're saying, like the old style health, like what is actually going on with this person? What is the root cause? Not what the flow chart says to give for medication, but why? Is it a heavy metal? Is it a metabolic? Is it a methylation? Is it you got whacked in the head and now your endocrine function's off and your testosterone's tanked out? And by the way, like if you're on HRT, it affects other things. So how can we get that back naturally? So we're running very niche labs. And we've been able to do a lot of this in the way. So we also do RTMS, which is like the umbrella version of MERT therapy. Any stimulation is good stimulation. So we partner that with functional health, and we see even better results because we're really getting to the root causes of what else is affecting this person's interdependent system while they're having this stuff. So like if you have a mineral imbalance, you are going to feel very bipolar. And if you go into a doctor's office and you tell them I'm feeling very bipolar, they're going to give you a mood stabilizer. If you come to us, we're going to look at that mineral imbalance and try to regulate some of that stuff. And our docs are great. If pharmaceuticals are necessary, they're going to give them to them, but we're going to look at the whole person and really see. We also have a nurse on staff now that's doing ketamine therapy, IV infusion ketamine therapy, which is great. Like it allows for more neuroplasticity, and for people who are really good at compartmentalizing, it allows those walls to come down in a way that they can handle it properly. We're adding hyperbaric oxygen therapy next month. We also do a program that I'm super proud of. It's called the SPIN program, the Somatic Program for Integrative Neurobalancing. And we worked with this amazing occupational therapist, and it's a 3-day-a-week OT program, all billable to TRICARE. So we do everything that we can under TRICARE and VA-CCN. It's a 3-day-a-week program where we work on getting both sides of the brain to talk to each other. We do primitive reflex integration with cold lasers. When you're really stressed, your primitive reflex system goes out of whack. The baby does the Morrow response, that can come out of whack in adults. And we test the reflex system, and with these lasers, 2 to 3 sessions, those reflexes are back integrated typically. Whereas if you worked in just standard OT with exercises, it could take up to 6 months. And another part of that program, we're also doing auditory integration therapy. So you listen to specially recorded music, and it hits at bands. When you listen to music on the radio, you hear it at about 430 hertz. The way this is recorded on different bands, it activates and strengthens different parts of the brain. And then we teach people how to breathe. I know as a former cop, I'm a shallow breather. And it's like a thing when our vagal nerve gets all out of funky, like we're shallow breathers. So we teach people again through a lot of different biofeedback systems how to deeply breathe and exhale. Because we got to think of it like because we are excreting toxins from the body. We got to get that full expansion of breath. So those are some of the programs we're running now. And then at the end of the year, I'll be on staff doing mental health counseling. Chris will be on it next year. We talked at Bragg, I don't know, a few months ago, and the Lord just shifted something in his heart. And he was like, Marcia, I want to be a counselor with you. And I was like, let's do it. Let's do this.
Okay, so let's go back to, we covered a lot of ground here right there. Yes. So what does MERT stand for, MERT?
It's magnetic resonance therapy.
Okay.
So it's magnetic EEG guided resonance therapy. So we start with an EEG, we map the brain, which I think is so important for military type people who need the map, because we can show you what ideal looks like, and we can show you where we're at, and we can show you how we're going to kind of work to try to get there.
Okay. And then under that umbrella, there's a bunch of functional modalities that you're using to address issues that can help the brain. Now, what I love hearing about this is that, the problem that we have with most of the modalities is it doesn't impact the brain, right? And from a physiological, a challenging perspective, create neuroplasticity, new neuronal growth, synaptic growth, whatever we got to do to recover. And you talked about hemispheric, communications, which are broke down under a lot of this. So I think this is from a repetitive head impact perspective. I mean, the fact that this is amazing. And so I guess one of my questions would be, if a veteran comes to you, right, and what are you using to look at their brain from you got his DD214. And by the way, I can give you the SOCOM GBEV calculation. I broke it down into an Excel spreadsheet
Nice.
that veterans can go ahead and just, calculate themselves up, which will be, other tools they can take to the VA when they're claiming for disability and stuff like that.
Nice.
But so when a veteran comes to you, DD214, tanker, artillery, special operations guy, breacher, right? Are you doing any types of brain scans to go ahead and image the brain to validate that there is damage, DTI, fMRI, anything like that?
We are doing the EEG. So it's a QEEG. And we're
The
using
QEEG. Okay. Yep. That's another one. Yep.
And there
Absolutely.
are distinct patterns. It's not a diagnostic tool, but there are distinct patterns. With children on the autism spectrum, we often see really high delta wave and almost no alpha wave. So functionally, when I'm looking at that, I'm like, wow, their brain is operating like they're asleep while they're awake. So they're not getting that wave of fluid to wash away the oxidative stress while they're sleeping at night. So they're not getting the restful regenerative sleep. And they also probably feel like they're in a lucid dream with like brainwave patterns that way. With TBI, we often see competing alpha waves instead of one synchronous alpha wave back, middle, and front of the brain. And then with PTSD, we see hyperreactivity in theta and in beta, which seems to be very hallmark of that.
What are you seeing for, I guess from a repetitive head impact perspective, it would be just brain damage. I don't know. Are you attributing that? Are you calling that TBI, from the same impact?
Yeah, we are. And I think there's some other factors in with that too, that as we delve into this, everybody's talking about operator syndrome, but we also need to look at the medical terminology for that. And we're talking a lot about this in the neuropsych fellowship that I'm doing. And that is the cell danger response syndrome. So these cells sense danger. So they're all, falling in on each other with, all the different dysfunctions that we see. And the cell danger response is very identical to what we see with operator syndrome. Say what the question was again.
No, that's great. I mean, it's just, diagnosing that operator syndrome. I'm still kind of digging into that, as a, I think operator syndrome is just, as you said, a whole bunch of, different problems coming together in one messed up human being.
So that's what I wanted to say, because there's a new, not a new thing on this, but there's components to this that need to be recognized and addressed in this space. So there's a fabulous researcher. He's a MD psychiatrist. His name's Dr. Bransfield. He's an older gentleman. He does this phenomenal lecture on vector-borne illness and how that affects the brain, right? And so he looks at places where vector-borne illnesses are at the highest rate. And he specifically pulls up this chart on Afghanistan and how there's 25 prevalent, like everybody who goes there is pretty much going to get bitten and exposed to these 25. And in the US, we call it Lyme disease, but Lyme is like a catch-all for all these different vector-borne illnesses. And so what he did was he went through and he started testing people who had zero empathy, rage cycles, all the hallmarks of what we see with PTSD and TBI, and they had high levels of vector-borne illness. He started treating vector-borne illness. They started developing empathy again. A lot of their rage went away and things like that. But these vector-borne illnesses can cross the blood-brain barrier and have effect on the neurology. So you partner these blast exposures with vector-borne illness, and you have it's like a shitstorm, right? Like you have all these different things. And that's why we have we're doing the MERT and we're doing the HBOT and we're doing the stelloganglion blocks and we're doing the ketamine, but something still feels off. That's where we need to bring the functional testing in to like look at what is happening on a cellular level and what viruses or bacteria or parasites are impacting that as well.
How you validating those? So I want to talk about your tests. So we work with another that we're aware of another program, Dr. Mark Gordon. He has some very innovative tests. Of course, they're not covered by insurance because he's testing men for estrogen because that's an indicator of this, right? And there's not, we're working with him on just building awareness because optimizing brain health. We feel before you can start HBOT, ketamine just makes the impact of those modalities much better.
Oh yeah.
So talk to us about the tests. Very interested in what kind of tests you're doing, and then are you able to get insurance coverage for those tests?
Yeah. So one of my favorite labs, I can't believe I'm a place in my life where I'm like, my favorite lab is by a company called Genova. And Genova does some of the most niche cellular function panels that you can imagine. And just so happens they're in network with TRICARE now. So anybody who comes through that's TRICARE, we can get them RTMS if they qualify for the depression parts of that. And then we typically do go ahead and put them in. So we're looking at organic acids. We're looking at heavy metal exposure. We're looking at metabolics. We're looking at methylation. If you're interested in methylation, it's one of those things that it's like one of the two pillars of health, but you're really not sure what it is, and it's convoluted. So I just wrote a book on it so I can hand it out. We keep it in heavy stock here. You can go on Amazon. It's called A Quick Guide to Methylation. Really breaks it down, but it is one of those pillars of health that we have to really get synced up. There's a methylation mutation called COMT, and it's actually called the warrior mutation. And I would bet that most of you special ops guys have this warrior mutation because you don't feel alive unless things feel extreme. And it affects the way your dopamine breaks down and how your testosterone, different things with your hormones and things like that. And if the COMT mutation gets too out of whack and you're not balancing that with the proper nutrients, it can exacerbate all of these other symptoms.
What if you got that mother effer gene? I mean, does that
MTHFR is a part of the methylation cycle? Yes, and 70% of the population has it.
Yeah, I got that gene deficiency, so I got.
You all do too.
Folic acid. Or
but like if you went to the doctor with a lot of the symptoms that MTHFR causes, they're going to say, "Oh, here's this script and that script and that script." When if you really distill it down, you need a methylated B vitamin blend and you need to eliminate folic acid, and then you're good. Right?
Yep, that's crazy. Yeah,
but we're using Genova, we're using Alates. And our doc is great about getting some of the things we need to look at covered through LabCorp. But we try for every veteran that walks in the door, we integrate functional health labs with MERT. And I missed another thing. On Wednesdays, we do myofascial release. So if you haven't read,
I just came back. I don't know if you know Sue Heisman, the inventor of MERT. The myofascial, the whole thing. I just came back from a week-long retreat. My wife's one of the few level 5 instructors for MERT in the country.
Nice.
And she's got a new vibrator thing. It's amazing for it's instead of rollers and balls, this puppy, man, I mean, it jams you. If you need an introduction, look up the MERT method. It's a myofascial release. And the only reason I get excited is that this is one of the few things in my life that's not magic, that it really works. I haven't been to a chiropractor in 8 years. Like right now I'm fixing a knee problem with rollers and stuff. I mean, people are so unaware of the benefits of that from an anatomical and a physiological response measure. I mean, man, that is amazing, dude. It's good stuff.
When you think of fascia, they said the science was settled a few years ago and it's inert tissue. It does nothing, but fascia encases everything in your body. And it's not inert tissue. It's smart tissue. It sends the energy signals through your body. And now they find that it's rich in blank stem cells. They can use it to regrow areas that are damaged and things like that. But it also wraps tight. So like a sheet on a bed, if you have damage somewhere, it's going to, pull in one area and yank in another. And we have a lot of chronic pain with trauma, a lot of chronic pain cells. If you haven't read or listened to The Body Keeps Score, I highly recommend it because pain and trauma are closely linked, and that trauma settles in the body and it settles in the fascia. So typically around week 3, we see a trauma reemergence in MERT. And so we start them right off the bat. If they're TRICARE and they come in, or, if they're an adult and they come in, we try to get them with our occupational therapist so we can bill directly to insurance every Wednesday to start the myofascial release. Because when we say trauma reemergence, somebody thinks, oh, you're sitting in a corner crying. That's not what it is. It could be chronic pain in the body. It could be how that trauma, because we all experience trauma differently, we store it differently, and we walk through it differently. For me, when we opened this clinic, I finally did MERT. I left law enforcement on an injury and a PTSD diagnosis. And I would say because I had a special operations husband and because I had a special needs child, it was very easy to self-isolate. I didn't really need to go out a lot because I had these little kids at home and I had a bubble with like 3 friends. I did work a lot in nonprofit and doing different things like that, but obviously my PTSD was different than Chris's. Like, I would walk into a restaurant and I'd always be watching everybody's hands. And I knew that the most normal looking person could just pop off in the, like something could go wrong. And in that situation, they were crazy. He's like this big, strong guy. He's like, I was looking for the immediate threat. And I'm like,
His
everybody's
back is against the wall looking at the door.
Everybody's an immediate threat. And I always joke when I tell this story, like, as a law enforcement officer in a really fast-paced, like violent areas, the same area I grew up in, literally nobody ever called me to be like, it's my birthday, would you like a cupcake? They all would call for their worst possible moment. They'd want you to end it how they wanted ended, expedient, and they hated you the whole time for being there. So there's, a lot that comes with that in terms of psychological conditioning. So I did MERT when we first opened because I wanted to be authentic and be able to tell people how it felt for me. And I had that trauma reemergence at week 3. And I kept thinking like, nothing's going to help me. Like my PTSD made me feel like there were no highs and lows, that I was kind of in the middle. So I never felt really happy and I never felt really sad, but I always kind of wavered in there. And then I was always in service. I have, we have quite a few children and I have this husband that was having all these things, but we were finally in a place in life where I could try the MERT and try to see what it would do. And it was amazing because now I feel beyond that. Like I feel highs and I can feel lows and I feel fully engaged with my family again.
Wow. I mean, so how do you plan? Can you get HBOT and ketamine covered under TRICARE VA as well, or is that still out of pocket? I know that's a challenge for a lot of vets.
Yeah,
It's still a ganglion blocks too, man. Nobody's covering that except Task Force Dagger will help. Donovan and Banks Foundation will pay for still SGBs for veterans too.
Yeah, Task Force Dagger will help with the ketamine here, and HBOT is cash pay. But we can super bill, and if you have one of the conditions under it, you can likely get reimbursed. But we don't have it yet, where it's on its way.
No, super billing is great, and with ketamine too. I've looked at the business model for a while. The medicine costs nothing, right? It's all about the overhead, right? And if you need anybody to dial in, man, I'm on my 8th company, so if you need any help with the business side of that, let me know. I talk to people all the time. I don't want any money, but I'm very interested in something like this scaling because you have 80% of it covered by insurance. And we constantly talk to veterans. Like I know people that have mortgaged their homes, to treat this, right? To treat their brain because ketamine, HBOT, stellate ganglion blocks, brain supplementation programs are all the tests, right? Yep. That's $15,000 that they're out of pocket because they can't get it back. Then all the psychedelics, which we're seeing, huge improvements with veterans out there. Psilocybin, ayahuasca, haven't done all of it, to walk that walk. Plus I needed it, man. I had my own, TBI related crap. But that's just another, and you're touching ketamine. So you're looking at this out of the box approach to brain health that looks at, a lot of it. I mean, who's looking at heavy metals for crying out loud? I mean, that's methylation. Right. This is the first time I'm hearing anybody, and I know this space very well, that's looking at these other issues that could be impacting our veterans besides, either healing the brain outside, at their expense, or the typical, hey, here's a bag of drugs, man. Go wreck your marriage, right?
Exactly.
It's crazy.
All by the grace of God, right? Like that we've been able to bring together all these things that we had to piece together for ourselves. We're just trying to create something where if we can't be the resource for it here, we can look at a resource somewhere else. I want to bring up something else that nobody else is talking about. So many of you guys are on the CPAP machines, right? And they say you have to be on the CPAP machine to be on the CPAP machine for the rest of your life, improve your sleep quality. We have a dentist here that we refer to that does a device called the ALF device. And, there's a whole book on Pottinger's cats, and they fed these cats like basically standard American diet for 2 generations. And within 2 generations, they developed breathing disorders and they became infertile. So this guy in Northern Virginia, and you can get these other places, they designed this device. It's called the ALF device, and it naturally expands the upper airway, which causes the bottom jaw to come forward, right? So it does 2 things. It can help you prevent having to be on a CPAP, and it also tones the vagal response. So if you're constantly in fight or flight, you just start to feel kind of numb and you don't know you're in fight or flight anymore. It's just your normal. But when you tone that vagal response, you see all these people jumping in and out of cold plunges. They're probably CompT mutated, but also it's helping to tone that vagal response, right? So when they put the ALF device in my mouth, when I left law enforcement, I had to have all of this cut back and reset, and I had a breakthrough here, and they did some nice work on my face, and they redid my airway. So when they did the CT of my face for this ALF device, my airway was great, but my PTSD was still kind of wacky. So for 2 days, I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience. It didn't hurt, but I couldn't focus on anything else except for what was happening in my mouth. It felt
I can
really
attest
weird.
to that.
So I was at this neuropsych conference, and one of the psychiatric nurse practitioners was like, "Did you just get an ALF device put in?" And I was like, "Yes." She goes, "Well, you must have had low vagal tone because you're not going to have it anymore." And she was right. It was like magic. After that, my vagal tone, and I always say, like, I never wanted to get rid of the hypervigilance. Like, I like it. I want to know what's going on, but I did want to get rid of the cortisol with it. And between MERT and this ALF device, that's gone.
Yeah, that's interesting because I tell you, they put me on that CPAP. Then they said I had, blood pressure problems. This is what so they gave me some blood pressure pills. They didn't tell you it messes with Mr. Happy. And then you figure that out. And I was like, that's it. I'm running 5 miles a day. So I chucked those things away and I started running and I got off that. But, nobody should be on a CPAP if they can get off it, man. I mean, those things are horrible.
What's important, though, is that you're getting rich oxygen to the brain at night while you're sleeping, and doing something like an orthodontic appliance, like an ALF device or something similar, opens that airway enough so that you're getting enough oxygen to the brain at night so the brain can do the repairing cycle that it needs and wants to do while you're sleeping.
And that's an implant?
It's not an implant. It's a wire device, and it's actually really comfortable after. If you don't have PTSD, it's probably comfortable right from the get-go. But it like wraps around your back and around your front, and it actually repositions the way your tongue sits in your mouth so that you're like, I'm very like wide across your neck, and I had good teeth before, but it expands that upper airway, allows the jaw to come forward, and expands the airway back here so that you can get that oxygen-rich environment without a CPAP while you're sleeping at night. We see Dr. Bronson Family Dentistry. It's him and his dad are the dentists there. They're very holistic dentists. Lovely.
And you wear it at night?
It never comes out.
All the time.
Oh, so
they pop it in and out every 6 weeks, clean it, adjust it, expand it a little bit more, but it's not
like dentures, like braces.
Yeah, but it doesn't hurt like braces. It doesn't cost like braces.
Can you get TRICARE? Will TRICARE cover it if you got a diagnosis?
Well, I don't know if TRICARE does dental, but they might.
No, TRICARE doesn't do dental or
Yeah,
man. I mean, well, if it's because it's not really a dental problem, it's a CPAP,
right?
And I've got 5 chins problem. I mean, I don't know. I just that might be a different way to put another thing on it. But look, this is amazing. Here's what I would like you to do, because number one, I want to know more about this. I want to really dig into this because we're and I would love to invite you to our summit on repetitive brain trauma in September, the 3rd and 4th. Love to have you come down and maybe do a presentation. I think we have a 20-minute slot open on this. We have 1 day devoted to diagnosis and treatment, as we spend half the day on vets, half the day on kids and athletes. Then the next day is we are looking for innovation in the brain treatment space because it's so dire. So we'd like to extend that invitation, but let's wait for Chris to come back on because he keeps popping in and out. I don't know where he's at right now. He's
sorry. He has.
Let's wait for him to come back in, and then I would love you guys to talk about yourselves right now. what do you got going on next? Where can people find you? All right. If they have questions about everything you got going on. I mean, what's Marcia and Chris got, planned for the next year so that, brag about yourself. How can they find you on social media, LinkedIn, all that stuff that we all got to do?
Okay.
And your clinic's in Virginia, or is it going to be in New Hampshire?
No, we are in Northern Virginia now. We've been here since 2016. So the clinic is in Northern Virginia. We're in Ashburn. So over the next year, we're looking at opening a second location in Alexandria, doing a lot of the things that we're doing here. So right outside of Washington, D.C., 15 minutes to every base in the Pentagon there. Really try to get into that community and help these guys out. I'm finishing my MSW, which would make me a clinical social worker. I'm doing a fellowship in pediatric neuropsych. I plan on going right into my PhD in neuroscience and behavior. I'll be here doing it all during the time. I'll be seeing really specifically special operations families and first responders. We're doing a lot of work on the back end trying to get grants so that first responders can get covered by some of these therapy modalities as well. There's I have a brother who's a fireman who he really, like, my husband and my son are my why, but he's right there behind them. There's a whole level of toxin exposure that happens there and repetitive imagery. We all shoot. Chris and I shoot. Chris shoots competition. He's still a trainer, he's doing these competitions, but he shoots in enclosed ranges. Now there's a whole bunch coming out about, the low impact, high volume. Right. And so we're working on different things to help try to mitigate that. Chris is writing a book on his experience with TBI and PTSD.
Nice.
And his recovery through that. If his bandwidth wasn't so bad today, he probably would have talked more about that journey through that.
We'll just have to have you back on, man. I mean, this has been an amazing conversation. And,
I like
number one, I wish Chris was here. I want to thank you both for your dedication to each other. Okay. God has challenged you, with a, remarkable set of circumstances. And I'm sure you've heard the term post-traumatic growth, right? Yeah. PTSD, post-traumatic, whatever. I don't believe in that, trauma stuff, right? And you guys have taken, a PTS, a post-traumatic syndrome moment, and turned it into growth, into service for others, which is, the Lord's highest calling. And those that serve others have a purpose, a good purpose. And I want to bless you both on that journey and let you know that we're there for you. These are the kind of stories that I love to hear because of what it means to our veterans and what it means to you too, right? That both of you have been through, TBI, PTSD, found a way back, not to mention, healed your child.
Yeah.
I mean, just what an amazing story. And you're turning all that knowledge into, a solution that honestly, I think the military probably should look at adopting, because everything that you're talking about, even ketamine, is available, right? We're not talking some of the other psychedelics, and even, MDMA and psilocybin are not far behind on being approved. I think they're coming. Ayahuasca and ibogaine is still a bit out there, but there are absolutely use cases for those. They're a little bit, deeper into the chain there. But anyways, may the Lord bless you both. This is an amazing story. I want to get this out. And thank you both for your journey and your dedication to our service members, first responders, and anything the Mac Parkman Foundation can do to put the word out. Let us know. And we'll go ahead and absolutely. As a matter of fact, we're having a massive a fundraiser at the Army-Navy game in Baltimore for veterans' mental health. Would love to invite you to come in. We're having Fuel the Band as our opening act. It's going to be crazy, dude. It's going to be absolutely insane. And we'd love to have Chris and you there.
Oh my gosh, we would love that. That'd be so cool.
Yeah, dude. And guess what? I'm going to turn you on to the lead singer who needs to talk to you. Okay. We're working with him right now. And, but this is how the Lord works, man. So look, take care of each other, get that clinic going, get that second one. I want to know all about it. I could probably help you. Maybe, I don't know, look out for some investment money. There's people out there in the space. The Fox grants just opened up. There's a pretty good, I can send you the link to that. You're definitely in the space for that. Okay. And then our job is to any of the material you need to focus and help on repetitive brain trauma, please let us know, because that's our focus is identifying those veterans suffering from that, getting them diagnosed, validated, and send them to VA for disability, but more importantly, get them treatment that works, get them off those drugs. So,
well, thank you so much. Well, we're Brain Treatment Center Ashburn. We're so happy to be here. Thank you for this opportunity. We appreciate it.
a pleasure. Well, thank you so much. Chris, I'm yelling at you because you're out there somewhere. And Marcia, thank you so much. To our audience, another great show. Man, what a great story. To all of you, make sure you get on the website, download the book, the only book for parents. Had to write it, In My Grief. Get it. It's free. Become aware. Become informed. Download our app on the Google and Apple Store, Head Smart. The best concussion app on the market right now. And don't forget our summit on repetitive brain trauma, September 3rd and 4th in Tampa. The U.S. SOCOM commander is going to open for us. Frank Larkin is speaking. We've got an amazing lineup of speakers on repetitive blast exposure, repetitive head impacts, and how to treat and diagnose it. Okay, remember to like us. Pass it around on social media. We're out there on X, Facebook. Get us as much exposure as we can, as you can. It helps all of us on this. And remember, you got one melon, and your kids only have one melon. Take care of it. We'll see you soon. God bless you all, and we'll see you next time on Broken Brains with Bruce Parkman. Take care.